Welcome to level 3 of the Vegan Sushi Series. Today, Tommy will be showing you how to make the cheeseburger roll. So inside it has a Beyond Sausage, avocado, lettuce, and caramelized onions. And it's also an Aburi sushi, so he had torched it with some cheese and chipotle mayo, topping it off with some crispy shallots and some dried chili shreds. Oh, and also if you want to learn how to make the sushi rice, be sure to watch our Inari Sushi video.
So the first thing we start off with is some Beyond Sausage that we're gonna cook down and slice into quarters. I don't add any oil when I cook the Beyond Sausage because I find them to have a lot of fat in themselves already. The side we add the sliced shallots or onions. I add a little bit of oil so it helps with browning. When we're cooking onions, we want to cook them on a single layer so they cook more evenly and they brown much faster. So this is how it looks after like maybe 5 minutes in the pan. As you can tell, the onions have been caramelized been cooking down for quite a bit. The sausage has developed a crispy color, a brown color around all edges. Then I'm just gonna slice these Beyond Sausage into quarters. Once we slice into quarters again, I'm gonna shift all my onions to one side of the pan. Then I'm gonna add the Beyond Sausage back into the pan to allow it to even cook further down. So you want to use the fat from the Beyond Sausage to kind of caramelize your onions, so it adds extra flavors to the onion. So once we put our Beyond sausage in one layer, we'll let it cook for a bit, then we'll brush some barbecue sauce on it. Now we just want to keep cooking the sausage until it's fully cooked. Then we're going to lower the heat. We're going to glaze it with the barbecue sauce. After we pour the barbecue sauce, we kind of want to evenly distribute the barbecue sauce on the sausage. So we're going to take the brush and brush the sausage. When we're brushing the sausage, we could start noticing some of the sausage starting to brown even more. It burns quite quickly, so we want to do our best to watch it carefully. And we're going to turn it on its side so it allows the top side to get a little bit more browning. We're going to mix the onions later in the barbecue sauce too to add even more flavor to our roll. See, I just added just a little bit more barbecue sauce because I felt like there was not enough coating on the backside. We see our onions starting to really start to caramelize and cook down. They've definitely got a lot smaller in size, and when they get smaller, that means they're going to be more flavorful when you eat in a row. And you don't need to add any more oil to the onions because there's quite a bit of that rendered out of the Beyond Sausage. Now we take our Beyond Sausage out to cool. Then I'm going to toss the onions in the remaining barbecue sauce and fat. This just allows for optimal flavor when we put it in the finished roll, and you'll notice how big of a difference it makes when you cook it in a certain way. Here's the final shot of our Beyond Sausage and caramelized onion. So now we're just starting to roll our sushi rolls. You just want to make sure you have everything prepared. We have our seaweed, our rolling mat, our ingredients chopped up into even pieces. Now I'm just scooping the rice off my baking sheet and putting it onto the seaweed on the rough side, spreading out with my fingers, making sure my fingers are slightly damp so the rice doesn't stick to my fingers. I think that's a very crucial part when you're making sushi, is making sure your fingers are wet enough. So as you can see, I'm just dipping my hands in the water and rubbing them evenly so I get a thin layer of water, so I don't make the sushi rice too wet, but just enough to allow the rice not to stick to my hands. When we're spreading the rice, what we want is a pretty thin layer, but a nice consistent thin layers. You should be able to see the seaweed poking through the rice. Now we're just seasoning the rice with everything bagel seasoning. And when we're seasoning the rice with a seasoning blend that has salt, we want to make sure we don't add too much because it'll just make the roll too salty. Important part, right? So make sure we flip our roll because it's an inside out roll. We're gonna start off with the avocado. So grabbing nice and even pieces, trying to distribute it through the roll as evenly as possible. I'll grab 3 pieces, 2 big pieces and 1 small piece for the middle. Then after that, I'm gonna grab our caramelized onions to put a thin layer so the roll, each piece of the roll gets a little bit of that sweet caramelized onion flavor. Now I'm gonna grab my fresh lettuce from the garden and add it to a roll to really bring the cheeseburger some freshness and add just a little bit more texture and flavor to our roll. Our final ingredient is our Beyond Sausage cooked in barbecue sauce, and I'm just gonna rip that last piece so it's consistent throughout the whole way through. Wash my hands. We want to make sure when we're working, we're always working very clean. So we're gonna start the roll. So we use the end of the sushi mat to kind of squeeze all the ingredients in as we're rolling, because we want the roll to be as tight as possible, pretty close to as tight as possible. And now I'm just gently pressing down on the roll as I'm rolling it over. And what I'm doing now is just holding the bottom of the sushi mat and just pulling and gently squeezing the roll, so I'm tightening it just a little bit more and a little bit more, compressing the sushi rice into one consistent roll, but not squeezing it to the point where the rice just crushed itself. Now, when we get to the ends, I'm gonna just dab my fingers in the water and press in so we get that nice flat bottom tip of the sushi roll. And once again, I'm going to do this to the other side, roll it, cover the sushi in the mat, and wet my fingers, press down on the sushi end to squeeze it and to make that nice form shape. After we finish tucking the ends in, we're going to continue to tighten it just to solidify the form of the sushi roll, and just continue just gently pressing it. Now we see we have a pretty even consistency throughout the whole roll. I'm just gonna form it by pressing down on the sushi mat, allowing the bottom of the sushi roll to be flatter. What you see me doing now is I'm cleaning my blade with a wet towel. So the wet towel helps add moisture to the knife, so when you slice the rice, it doesn't stick to as much. And as you see, I run my knife underneath my sushi to release it from the cutting board. Now we can see our roll is a pretty nice and consistent roll. So the first step is always slicing in half. Then we're gonna slice those halves into halves once again. Then once we get that, we generally always wanna clean after every cut. So now we're gonna slice those halves into halves again. Then we're gonna perform one more slice on the last half, cleaning our knives in between cuts and having a slight sawing motion, just allowing it to cut a little better. And our final clean, as we clean the blade, we're gonna run the blade underneath the sushi, releasing it from the bottom and not allowing the rice to stick. Then we're gonna flip it onto the flat side and start from the middle and start plating it from the middle. So once we finish rolling our rolls, we're gonna garnish with chipotle mayo. If anyone wants to learn how to make this recipe, please leave a comment. This has been a staple sauce in my household for 5 or 6 years now. So once we finish brushing on our chipotle mayo, we're gonna add some cheddar cheese on top to make it the cheeseburger roll. Once we finish garnishing with our cheddar cheese, we want to make sure we try our best to evenly distribute the cheese on top of the sushi roll, so it allows each piece to have a little bit of the cheddar cheese. This dish was inspired by a different sushi dish that I have tried before at one of my local restaurants, and it really inspired me to make my own dish of my own. So by adding the cheese and chipotle mayo, it kind of changes the flavor profile of the whole dish, and having that smoky sausage in there with fresh avocados and that sweet caramelized barbecued onions just adds an immense amount of flavor to the roll. Now we could see that the torch is starting to just caramelize that cheese, add a little bit more flavor, a little bit of smokiness flavor from the flame itself, and we just want to go across the top so it's nice and evenly cooked. And our final garnish is our crispy shallots to add even more texture. And so traditionally in Japanese sushi, to add texture, they would use tempura batter that's fried, but they would just flick it into the oil and allow those little bits to get super crunchy. So what the crispy shallots kind of do is kind of imitate that in a little way, but add just even more flavor. So I'm just garnishing with some curly parsley, and on the very top of it, I'm just gonna use some fancy garnish, which is just shredded chili into strains. Just typically found in very fancy Japanese cuisine. As you can see, the dish looks quite beautiful already, but don't feel like you have to have all these extra garnishes. I think it just makes it look a little nicer, but even just the roll with the cheese and the mayo would be definitely good enough. What inspired me to make this dish is that typical vegan sushi restaurants have really bland rolls, and this is definitely not your typical bland sushi vegan recipe.
It's time to taste the cheeseburger roll.
This is definitely my favorite roll I've ever created. It has the very meaty texture from the Beyond patty, avocados, the slightly sweet caramelized onions that add great flavor, the melted cheese on top, and the crispy shallots that add just extra texture to the roll that really makes it different from any kind of sushi roll that I've ever had. It's excellent. What do you think, Anka?
It's good. I already ate a second piece.
Justin, you want one? You want one, Justin?
Thanks for watching.
All right, so next time we will be filming a karaage tofu nugget, and it is a very crispy tofu with rice flour, so it's gluten-free and it's very delicious. Stay tuned for next time.
Be sure to like, follow, and subscribe to our channel so you can see more videos.